Thanks for joining us on Fox Valley Today. I'm your host, Meg Duray. We often get to hear about the rich history that we have in the Fox Valley area, some from specific towns, and in general, a while back we heard about a project that was going on and researching Yorkville, the background of the city of Yorkville, and some local authors and historians and contributors who are looking to get involved with this project. They gave a call out to the public for community information and photographs, and we finally have a finished product here, and we're here to get a little glimpse of that today and talk with the author and contributors for the book. We are joined in the studio by Jillian, Howard, and Thomas. I'm going to let you all kind of say your names and what your sort of role was in the book.
Right. I'm Jillian Duchnowski. I was kind of author or compiler behind this book. We collected 190 photographs for the book, and I kind of did most of the research behind creating the captions for the book.
Howard Manthei, Executive Director at the Chapel in the Green, and connected with Jillian over the years on other projects. And when I got the call here, the idea was, well, you have so many folks in the chapel that have the history, so we hosted a session one day and then kept on going with collecting information and passing it her way as it became available.
All right, and you also wrote the foreword for the book.
I did,
All right. And Thomas?
I'm Thomas Milschewski. I'm a student at Northern Illinois right now, and I helped contribute photos to the book for Jill, and mainly of my street. I worked on the history too, and I had a great time contributing some photos.
Well, great. I know that you came out and you kind of put the call out there for people who had some local history to talk about, especially photographs you were looking for. How did the search go? Give us an idea of what that process was like.
There's a few different layers to the search. We started out with that Saturday at the chapel where probably 5 or 6 people came out, some people with extensive collections, and they were very generous to share those with that. They were people who clearly had been collecting like old postcards and old photos of Yorkville for years, I would say, native Yorkville residents. And then some folks at the chapel were generous with reaching out with some of their connections to older families who were able to contribute photos of kind of lifestyle scenes, if you will. Old Yorkville High School marching band photos, some photos from inside the old Yorkville High School, which is now Parkville Christian School, those types of things.
Okay.
So.
And Howard, how did you partner with, you mentioned a little bit, you are the executive director of the Chapel on the Green. There is a historical society associated with that, and you had some background there?
Well, we're a separate entity now. It's a non-for-profit organization. Early on, when the chapel came into being about 25 years ago, the Congregational Church put up a new building and left this church empty, and the building itself is 160 years old. Our birthday is next year. And one thing led to another, and it got to the point where, well, we have all this history, and a lot of folks know all of us from over the years. And it was a treat to be with Jillian on that Saturday with her scanner and her reporter background. And as folks would come in, and then they sit down, and then they started comparing notes, and it's, well, what did you say now? And then here she's jotting that down, and she was just a scanner queen. I tell you, I don't know how she did it that morning. But it kind of grew and evolved like that. And then, as she said, others followed up with phone calls and so on.
Now, Jillian, he mentioned your reporter background. You have done journalism in the area, and you've covered, really, it sounds like a wide range of the local areas and local topics. What was it about Yorkville that caused you to really decide to focus on this for the book?
Well, there's a few different things. One, the Images of America series from Arcadia. It was attractive because Arcadia Publishing offers a lot of support. They are a publishing entity. There were similar books for Plano and Montgomery and a lot of the surrounding areas, and I noticed there wasn't one for Yorkville, which seems kind of sad, right? Like Yorkville should have its own. But also I spent 2 years at Yorkville Patch and just really enjoyed the community. I really enjoyed how much everyone who was active in the community continued to give back to the community. And as I was doing my research, I learned that was something that had always been the case. There's always seemed to have been at least a core group of people who made Yorkville a community that was working.
That's great. As you have gone through this process, have you found anything that's really I mean, specific to Yorkville, there are, like you said, these other towns have these books, and is there something that especially stands out for Yorkville as you look through the history?
There were a couple of special buildings that I personally enjoyed seeing the little changes that had happened to them throughout the years. There's a few separate photographs in the book of the old courthouse, which is kind of an iconic building. So not only is that history charted in there, but some photographs. A family whose father was sheriff, so lived in the sheriff's house in the old jail across the street from the old courthouse, shared some photos from inside. They were children. The people who contributed the photos were children at that time, so there's pictures of them kind of playing in the empty cells and stuff like that. I also enjoyed just pictures of downtown. Downtown, well, we think of it as a constantly changing place. The restaurants and businesses down there certainly have changed even in the last 5 years.
Right.
The buildings themselves look a lot the same, haven't changed a lot. Same kind of thing with the bridge over the Fox River. If you think about it, a lot of people can have fond memories of events at Bicentennial Park, or just how the bridge has changed itself. As a person who moved to Yorkville probably 4 years ago now, I kind of enjoyed seeing how the bridge itself had changed and how it affected what was downtown.
Right. So you were kind of a newer resident to Yorkville. Thomas, I know that your family has lived in the city for quite some time, and you really were kind of brought into this through, your home and your neighborhood and where you live, and looking at the rich history of that. How did you become interested in that?
Well, I live on Houston Street, and when growing up, my neighbors told me that it was called Bankers Row because it was the most prominent place to live during the time, I guess. And my house, the guy who lived there, he owned and founded the Kendall County Record. Okay. So I was really interested in the history because a few years back I met people who lived in the house before me, the nurses who took care of them. I met them, and that kind of boosted me, and I really wanted to figure out more about the house. So that ended up me going around and all the neighbors bothering them and figuring out who lived where, and I found a lot of neat history, and I found all these neat photos and people who lived there before, and it got me closer to all my neighbors, and they really appreciated it. I think it was really nice. My family's lived here since 1998.
Okay. I think that's one very neat aspect of this whole project, that it's not just, somebody who lives in Yorkville looking at old pictures and thinking, wow, I can't believe that's what it was like then, but creating that kind of sense of community. I mean, that's something that I think can get lost a lot in our modern times, where many of us don't even know our neighbors, and some of them have lived there for many years, especially in the older neighborhoods, that they have these stories, and learning them is really what creates that sense of community. When you were putting the pictures out there, I know you had a Facebook page where you were kind of posting pictures and asking for pictures. Did you have experiences where you had a picture, you had no idea who it was, where it was, that sort of thing, and you had somebody maybe randomly recognize something in those photos? Did that ever come up?
We did actually do that a few times. Post there's something to the effect of, do you recognize this, or do you recognize the people? I would say they were for more modern-ish photos, like the Countryside Center and stuff like that. We did that a few times. We've posted other photos, especially ones of the chapel and the green when it was a functioning church, where people instantly recognized the people who were walking out of the church and that sort of thing. So that was neat. Howard was kind enough to take some photos to church and have some of the older, long-term members identify some of the older people.
And I must say, Thomas is being a little modest here. One of my favorite photos in the book is the cover, which he donated to the cause. But it just speaks so much to that downtown area. Like Jill said, it's still the same buildings, but just the dress and the cars and the number of people that are just parading around the street.
I mean, you could look at that and think, oh, maybe that's Aurora or Naperville or even Chicago somewhere, and it's Yorkville, downtown Yorkville. Who would have thought?
The sidewalk is so big.
Really, yeah. Something we will not see down there
Major
anymore.
change.
The signage is something, a lot of these buildings, it's going to be so interesting to see the photos. Jillian, talk a little bit about working with Arcadia and what the publishing process was like for that. I mean, once you had all these pictures gathered, then you actually have to put them together and document everything.
Right. They had some very specific guidelines for how many pages the book needed to be and how many photos needed to be in it, and even word counts for how long the introductions could be and everything. So I decided what order the photos went in, and I, as I said, wrote all the text for it. It's something that Arcadia brought a lot of talent to was toning the photos and kind of bringing out the best part of the photos. Flipping through the book, I can tell you as the person who scanned them in, what I scanned in did not look as great as kind of the quality that you'll see in there. And the cover is actually a great example of that. It was a postcard that I believe Thomas had actually bought off eBay, and it's quite old. And so when I first looked at it, I didn't realize you could see the bridge over the Fox River in the background, but through that, what Arcadia did as far as toning the photos and everything, that really pops out now.
Wow.
So.
And how long was that process of, once you had begun collecting the photos? I know you were out here, I'm not sure when that was that you were out here, but until the time of, when you actually had the book in hand, how long of a process was that?
I would say Howard and I started talking about putting the book together and sending a book proposal to Arcadia November of last year. So it's been about a year from start to end.
It seems like a pretty short turnaround for the amount of photos, the amount of work that went into this. Great. Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit more about the actual stories in the book later in the show, but you are going to be having a couple opportunities for people local in the area who are looking to get a copy of the book, who are looking to just celebrate with you guys and have that community. The first event is going to be at Cobblestone, is that right?
That's right. This Friday we're going to have a launch party, so we'll have some appetizers and a cash bar, and we'll have plenty of copies of the book available as well for people who would like to get a copy. And it's just going to be an open house from 5 to 8. Okay. People can stop by and kind of mingle, meet some of the people who gave photos for the book, and kind of get a closer look at it.
Great. The price for the book, we should mention, if you have that,
is $22.
Okay, and it's a paperback book and about 190 photographs, you said. That's going to be the first opportunity for people to really, get their hands on it. It's going to be out there for the public. And then the following day, you're going to have an event that kind of ties in with the history of the Chapel on the Green.
Yes, we're going to have just a casual book signing at the chapel for people to stop by and pick up a copy of the book. It'll be on Saturday from, do you remember what time it is?
It's afternoon.
Yeah.
1 to 5 or 2 to 5.
Okay.
Yeah. And so people can just pop in and get that. We do have planned a more in-depth event in January. It'll be on a Sunday in January where folks can come in and I'll give a little talk about the history, and we'll have some older artifacts on display for people to look at.
Oh, great. We're going to take a quick break here, but we're going to hear more about the Yorkville Then and Now. It's the history book that has been put together through Arcadia Publishing with our author and contributors here today. We'll take a quick break, but stay with us for more on Fox Valley Today.
Congrats on paying off all those student loans.
Finally, right?
How'd you manage that anyway?
I started tracking my spending, changed a couple of habits.
Wow. I'm kind of living paycheck to paycheck right now. I don't even know how I'm doing it.
Well, have you tried saving a little?
I want to, but where's that money going to come from? Bill collectors, they're the worst. Am I right?
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind.
Not home.
Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org.
I remember the moment.
I'll never forget that moment.
That moment?
It was a moment that changed my life. I'd been training with my team for months, and now we had been called up for the first time. The real deal. Wildfires were getting dangerously close to homes. At that moment, I got my first taste of just how important the Guard is to my community.
See how the Guard can be an important part of your life at NationalGuard.com.
What?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice. And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
We couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
We're back on Fox Valley Today. I'm Meg Duray, and we are talking with Jillian Duchnowski, Howard Manthei. We've got all these I names
I know
here. And Thomas Milschewski. They have been working on the Yorkville Then and Now history book. It is now available. We've talked a little bit about the events that are going to be happening. You can check them out Friday the 19th at Cobblestone Bakery and Bistro in downtown Yorkville. Again, the following day, the 20th, at the Chapel on the Green in Yorkville. And you are making the book available online, is that right?
That's right. If someone wants to assure they'll have a copy available in the next few weeks at YorkvilleThenAndNow.com. You can find out all sorts of information about the events, and also there's a pre-order form.
Okay, so they would print that out and
mail
get it to you?
Yes.
Okay, all right. We've got some examples here. We've kind of dismembered a book. We had a book that was not in great condition, but the photos themselves are there. So just giving a little disclaimer on the photos that you'll see here. But as we've talked about the Chapel on the Green and really its background and really a strong part of the Yorkville community, we've got a photo here of the Chapel on the Green. This is the location of the event on the 20th. So we're going to hope that we can get some shots of the photos here. And Howard, if you would want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned briefly the history of the building, but
Sure.
a little bit of background on that.
This is a great photo. The chapel, of course, is in across from the town square, and that's why we chose to call it Chapel on the Green. And this one shows the original bell tower. We don't know when that disappeared, but we're still researching that. And it has the building in its original 1855 state, that being sitting basically on the ground. Now, 1955, major renovation went on, and the building was raised and the whole basement put underneath and so on.
Okay.
So in January 18, it's a Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock, Jillian's coming in to kind of go through chapter and verse on what it took and show a lot of the images that are in the book, but a lot of them that didn't make it just because of the content size. Yeah. And so folks will be able to come in, and we just know, as she mentioned, that a lot of contributors will bring in some artifacts that they can actually go back and see after the presentation. So it's been a great history, and this January session will kick off our year of celebration. Being a 160-year-old church building in town, we'll be having a series of programs throughout the year that will focus on various historical aspects of the building and the town itself.
Okay, you mentioned you're hoping to have some artifacts that are available, and Thomas, you brought one in today that we've got right over here, and tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I go antiquing. So me and my mom, we went into an antique store in Sandwich, and we found this. It's old little, it's just a booklet, I guess they would sell at the Yorkville Bank if you got it open to check in their counter or something like that. And inside it's a little pins and needles book. It's from 1911. Wow. It's very delicate, but I loved it. My mom said, you have to buy that.
Well, yeah, it's just so neat to see. And Howard, you mentioned there were some names on there that then tied in with some of the other background that you were aware of.
The president of the bank's name, R.W. Newton, is the son of the sheriff who retired in town and built our home back
Wow.
in 1886 or so. And just seeing that name opened up another whole chapter as to what that little find all mushroomed into. When
all these things that are connected.
And that's what happened that Saturday, and I know it's going to happen in January 18 when all these folks come together, you know, and they start seeing these pictures that Jillian collected.
Thomas, if you want to, we're going to just flip to the next photo here. We've got some really neat ones. It's kind of interesting to see, like you said, the buildings. And this is another one of, this is downtown Yorkville?
It is downtown Yorkville. The building no longer exists, but it's the old Nading Hotel.
Okay, so that's the one on the left there, or is that the right?
Actually, they're buildings that are connected.
It's one.
Yeah, and Justice Nading started out as a baker in town and expanded to, I think they called them sleeping rooms at the time. But the original bakery is the shorter building. And so they put some rooms in the back, and then when that expanded, he built the 3-story hotel next door.
Now, is this the side that's closer to the river, or where was this downtown?
It is. It would have been close to the river if you're facing the river downtown. It would have been on the west side, the left-hand side of the road.
Okay, and I want to say this is one of the buildings that they sort of recently had to demolish or do away with. I remember there being a hotel, you know, in recent years.
Yep.
Okay. So interesting to see the buildings. I know you have some great photos of people as well.
Yes.
Aha, now this is a very famous figure in the Yorkville area.
Yes. Many people probably know or remember that Denny Hassert, before he went to the state legislature and then, you know, went to Washington and became Speaker of the House, was a coach and teacher at Yorkville High School. He was generous enough to give us some photos for the book. He included a few wrestling pictures, but he also included this classroom scene that you see, as well as a football picture. He coached football for a few short years.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I wasn't even aware that he did football. You hear a lot about, you know, I think they had a great wrestling career while he was coach there, so you hear a lot about that. But seeing in the classroom is really kind of neat, and, you know, of course you get the period hairstyles and wardrobe. That's always kind of funny to
He does
check
seem
out.
to favor plaid pants. Yes.
All right, what else have you got here?
This is my personal favorite in the book. John Schneider, a long time Yorkville resident, was one of the folks who was generous enough to let me bring my scanner to his home and kind of go through some boxes of old photos. And the girl on the left is his wife. When she was in high school, she was obviously a majorette. And I thought this was a wonderful slice of life picture. It kind of shows some of the small town nostalgia for Yorkville.
Yeah, what a great picture.
Now, for those who are new to town, as so many folks are over the last 10 years, when all of this mushroomed, they just wouldn't know that Schneider had a appliance business right next to the river, across from the hotel, which was next to the original library, or one of the early versions of the library, which is now gone as well. So getting to those folks that are just new to town and filling in the backstory is going to be fun when we have the chance to do that.
Absolutely. I think you have a few more photos we can
flip right there. We included some kind of more recent history photos as well. You may remember in the 70s there was a freight train that derailed in downtown Yorkville. And so there was a couple of people who shared their photos or their families' photos of that. And I also used the Facebook page to reach out and ask people for their memories of that day. So there's probably 10 or 11 different snippets of memories that people remember. You know, like I went down there the next day. There was one gentleman who, the night that this happened, he and his friend, they were children at the time, put a penny on the track to flatten it and worried that they may have been responsible for the derailment. Which of course they were not, but it's a cute little story to include in there. So that's another thing I think people might look forward to flipping through the more recent history.
Sure. All right, now here's another, it looks more like the kind of neighborhood shots or the, just a kind of a clip of life, like you were saying.
Right, right. On the top photo in the background, you can actually see Thomas's house.
Oh, nice.
Right, where's my finger? There, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But there was a family whose mom had grown up in the house. She'd lived there in the 40s in that neighborhood on Houston Street. And so they shared a number of kind of scenes of life photos that kind of give a little bit of flavor of what Yorkville used to be like.
Right. And Thomas, you kind of mentioned your street, but there are just some beautiful homes along there, and it's neat to see them, while they were kind of in their heyday or like in their period style.
Well, if you turn the page here, actually, that was in the book. You can see at the top here, this is also my street here.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't see it here on the TV, but there's a fence there, the house next door there. It was a carriage house for the house next door to it.
Oh, okay.
And through time, it was split into 2 different homes. And it's really neat actually to see there that the fence there is actually old wagon wheels from carriages.
Oh, nice. Okay. Wow, yeah, and these, you've got some pictures of the residents that are right there. Were you able to talk to the people that are in the photographs, or are these more, ancestors or families of these people?
Well, mainly the people in the photographs that I connected with have passed on, but their families, like Jillian mentioned, Kathy Fondel. Her mother grew up in the house across the street from me, and I connected through her, through Ancestry.com actually. I typed in the name of the lady who grew up across the street, and she shared all these photos of my house, and it was mainly ancestors who I connected with, like grandchildren and stuff like that.
Kathy Fondel, her mother had, as she had gotten older, had put together kind of her memoirs for her children. So there were some kind of like first-person type accounts of what she remembered of Yorkville and her impressions of her neighbors and that sort of thing. So some of those quotes I pulled from the original document, and it's in the book as well.
So what would you say, what have you really gotten out of this whole experience and all the research that you've put into this? What's your kind of, your wrap up, your take on this?
My take on it? I like some of the themes in history a little bit. Looking through the book, I feel it kind of shows that the more things change, the more they stay the same. As I said, there's some great photos of past marching bands. Well, we all know that Yorkville High School still has a pretty active marching band. There's some photos of construction along downtown, and also photos of buildings that are obviously no longer there, many of them because of when they expanded the bridge over the Fox River in the early 80s. They had to tear down some buildings because they actually widened the bridge as well, the 4 lanes. And now many residents can think about the inconveniences of construction along 47.
Absolutely.
So yeah, definitely the more things change, the more they stay the same.
All right, well I want to make sure that we get out the dates and times again for the events where if anybody's looking to meet with you, to talk with any of you, or to just get your copy of the book, where can they do that?
Friday we'll be having a launch party at Cobblestone Bakery and Bistro in downtown Yorkville. On Saturday, the launch party is from 5 to 8. On Saturday from about 2 to 4, we'll have a book signing at Chapel on the Green where people can pick up a copy of the book as well. And then next month in January, Sunday, I believe it's the 18th, we'll have a presentation at 2 p.m. with a little bit of a history talk at the chapel. And obviously books will be available then as well.
All right, well, it's just really interesting and really great to hear that, you guys were able to talk to so many people in the community and really preserving these things. I mean, this book it's kind of priceless when you think about, the amount of people that put time into it and donated their efforts and their photographs, really, so.
Yeah, I do owe a debt of gratitude to the people who provided photos. Overall, more than 30 people or entities provided photos for this.
Wow.
And just this weekend, a friend sat down and wrote out an index of all the names in there for me, all the people who were mentioned, and it's about 350 people.
Oh, wow.
Names are mentioned.
Well, that's so great.
Yeah.
That is, thanks. I want to thank you guys all for coming out. Jillian, Howard, and Thomas, thanks for sharing the book with us. Thanks for putting it together, really, and we just wish you the best with all the events. And thanks again for coming out to the studio. Thank you for joining us.